Absolutely the right effect at the right moment, and was his great achievement, I think.
The success of Cavalcade led Coward to attempt a Navy version in 1942 and to star in it himself. The result was In Which We Serve, possibly his most successful film.
Well, you know what I like now? Nice hot cup of tea. I'd like a nice beer myself. Look out! Here come the bastards back again! Keep your heads down, get as low as you can. Miss Butterfingers. Darn it! I spoke too soon.
Lord Louis Mountbatten was a very great friend of Noel's, and I think that it happened because they were talking about the Kelly, the destroyer, Mountbatten's destroyer, which was a very famous destroyer that went right through and then got sunk off Crete. And I think that's how it happened. And Noel used, as you know, all Lord Louis' speeches in the movie and then played the part.
Here comes the dawn of a new day, Flags, and I shouldn't be surprised if it were a fairly uncomfortable one.
Yes, sir. It's a very pretty sky, sir. Somebody sent me a calendar rather like that last Christmas.
Did it have a squadron of Dorniers in the upper right-hand corner?
No, sir.
That's where art parts company with reality.
Yes, I'm afraid you're right, sir. Cigarette?
Thanks.
Mountbatten took a close interest in the film, even inviting the King and Queen, along with the Princesses Margaret and Elizabeth, onto the set at Rank Studios at Denham. He also provided 200 serving sailors to act as extras and viewed the rushes with Noel Coward every weekend to check for inaccuracies in the way the Navy was depicted.
Well, Blake, Thermal, how are you feeling?
Fine, sir, thank you.
Got concussed a bit, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I think I did, sir.
The first lieutenant tells me that you stood by the gun even when most of the crew were knocked out. Is that true?
Well, sir, somebody had to do it, sir.
You did damn well. I'm very proud of you.
Thank you, sir.
I want to see my captain.
All right, old man. I'm here. Don't try to talk. Just rest.
He brought the theatre discipline into the studios. I mean, on the first morning of shooting, a certain actor was about 10 minutes late. And Noel said, this isn't good enough. This wouldn't happen in the theatre. He said, what's your name? Pointed to a young man called Michael Anderson, right? A director. He was then the third assistant. He said, go and put the moustache on and go and play the Marine.
Coward co-directed the picture with a young film editor, David Lean.
Acting was a kind of mystery to me. And Noel, of course, was simply wonderful at that. He was wonderful with actors. And I took over the technical thing. I decided where the camera was, what lens to use, and Noel took over the actors. Well, I said I was lucky. I was lucky because Noel became terribly easily bored. And he got bored very soon. And when he wasn't acting in one of the scenes, he wasn't there. So I handled the whole damn thing. You know, great piece of luck.
You know what's happened, don't you?
Further pictures followed. Another collaboration with David Lean turned Coward's one-act play, Still Life, into Brief Encounter.
I've fallen in love with you.
Yes, I know.
Tell me honestly. Please tell me honestly if what I believe is true.
What do you believe?
That it's the same with you. That you've fallen in love too.
Sounds so silly.
Why?
I know you're so little.
But in the late 1940s, good new plays were not forthcoming. Coward had always found he wrote best when abroad, in hotels or on board ship, and he travelled increasingly now.
When the storm clouds are riding through a winter sky, sail away, sail away. When the love light is fading in your sweetheart's eye, sail away, sail away. When you feel your song is orchestrated wrong, why should you prolong your stay? When the wind and the weather blow your dreams sky high, sail away,
He lived extravagantly and travelled all around the world with his friends on exotic winter holidays. Though he travelled the Far East, Europe and the Americas, it was Bermuda and Jamaica that became his favourites. Finally, he decided to move abroad, attracting criticism in the press for doing so. But why did he go?
A very simple answer in 2 words. Income tax.
In 1948, he bought his first house in Jamaica, accompanied by his young partner, Graham Payne.
We used to go up there in the evenings, and the fireflies used to come out. It was unbelievable how big they were and how many of them. And we used to go up there with all the visitors and take a nice good old flask of the dry martini and sit and just look at the view and the sun going down. And people used to say, oh, you know, it's, these martinis are very strong. And I said, no, it's the altitude. Anyway, he loved us up there so much that he bought a bit of land from a friend of his called Blanche Blackwell, who owned it, and built a little house.
A room with a view and you.
He called this second house Firefly and wrote some of his later plays here. He finally became a tax exile in 1956, but was never completely content away from England.
Something did go. Not only did he begin to have bad health, but I think his touch with everybody in the theatre and the life he led in London was something he couldn't forget.
With the best will in the world, you aren't in touch the way you are when you're in Benenden or wherever he was, in Kent and Gerald Road in London, soaking up the atmosphere.
In the 50s, Coward wrote 7 new plays, but they still weren't successful. He'd had flops before, though, and wasn't unduly disconcerted by this new string of failures. At the opening night of Sirocco, he went onto the stage at the end to face his hostile audience.
I knew I was the one they were after. So I went on and didn't look at the audience at all. I turned my behind to them and shook hands with Ivor and kissed Bunny Doble, and then turned and did the most irritating thing in the world. And stood practically, happily crucified, and refused to let the curtain come down. I thought, I wonder how long they can go on without their larynxes going. And they booed, and they booed, and they booed, and sure enough, it finally died away because they got tired.
But if his plays were failing, Coward still had other strings to his bow.
When his plays couldn't find an audience, or a good audience, a solid audience, he simply abandoned his plays and launched himself on the public as a sort of a turn. And his review, his songs, made him an enormous success in America, naturally, where his brand of unbridled individualism have found more favor than here. And his swank, you know, in America, a definition of a genius is anyone from England, that worked a treat.
I like America. I have played around every slappy, happy hunting ground, and I find America okay. I've been about a bit, but I must admit...
He went to Las Vegas in 1955 to launch upon the gamblers his idiosyncratic brand of cabaret. It was like entertaining the troops again, except that here he was an unqualified success.
In Dallas, Texas, they talk of sex, but only think of oil. New Jersey dames go up in flames if someone mentions bed. In Chicago, Illinois, any girl who meets a boy giggles and shoots him dead. But I like America.
I suppose he was a little more exotic for them. It was a sort of bird of paradise suddenly transplanted into Wilbur Stark's Desert Inn or wherever he performed down there. But, you know, the whole of Hollywood flew in, and he had one of the most enormous successes of his life.
Frank Sinatra, who was a great buddy, flew several people in, Judy Garland and a few others, Merle Oberon, and so on, that came for the first night. And Frank Sinatra said on the radio the next day, if you want to hear how a song should be sung, go to the Desert Inn and see Noel Coward.
The only surviving film of him singing is from a 1955 television special he made with Mary Martin.